is a little different. Okay, it works a little different grammatically, and passivization is a little little more specific than that. Okay, so one okay, let's say what passivization is, right? So if you had followed the lectures, I think passivization is when you don't want to specify the agent, and you do not want to let people know who the agent is. You don't want to tell people who the performer of the action is, right? So, or rather, in real life situations, when you do not want to take up responsibility, or you do not want to give, hand over the responsibility to somebody of a certain action, then you prefer to use the passivization method, right? Language, all languages, passivization is a process that you would see across languages, not just English. Majority of the languages will definitely have passivization in them, right? Because it is also a practically performed task, right? In real life examples, mostly you can, you will come across people who especially work in media, right? Media persons. I mean, anybody can use passivization, but if you talk about it in terms of occupation, job, or as a task that you perform on a day-to-day basis, then if you read or if you watch news channels, you would see that journalists have a tendency to use passive constructions a lot, right? Now, there could be several reasons for why they're doing it, but the major purpose of the use of passivization is that you don't want to hold anybody responsible for anything. Okay, it probably could be because you do not have a clearer picture of the events or the incident at this point of time. So you do not want to sound like you have come to a conclusion or you have decided who the person is, right? So a better method to say stay safe, and by stay safe I mean that you don't have to then further down go and say that this was a mistake and all that. A safer option would be always to just report instead of pinning down responsibility to this person or that person. So given this function, or given this task that they hold on a day-to-day life, passivization is a technique in language that is used very prominently in media. And grammatically, does it do three things majorly affects passivization. Okay, or when you're converting a sentence from active to passive voice, there are three major changes that happen in any passive voice. So the first one, as you see, or the which we traditionally have been hearing about passive sentences, are that the interchange in the position of the subject, right? Now, this part is very, very important to keep in mind, that it is only the position that gets reversed. The roles don't reverse per se, right? So it is wrong to say that the subject becomes object and the object becomes subject. What you can instead say is that the object position and the subject position gets interchanged. Okay, this may not be the exact process that's happening, but to to simplify, not simplify, to say it is a sort of a reductive argument, but even then, just for the sake of understanding, if you're talking about passive constructions, then be careful about saying the interchange of positions and not the subject and object themselves. Subject and the object don't change. They remain. Their roles as objects and their roles as agents don't change in a sentence. Okay, that is not possible. One cannot change the agent of a sentence. But what you can do is, in a passive construction, you just simply reverse their orders. Okay, that can happen. This is the first major visible change that you see. Another visible change that comes to us in passive construction is the morphology of verb. That is, the verb in the active sentence undergoes certain modifications in the passive construction. Now, what happens to the verb? The verb takes the participle form, right? So the boy killed the snake. The snake was killed. Okay, the snake was killed. What happened? Killed changes to was killed. So there is a be plus participle form, right? Now, because this was a past tense, you use the tense is taken over by the be form, and then the participle form of the verb kill is killed, right? So this is the change in the verb that happens. The verb from its active form changes to its participle form, be plus participle form to form the passive construction. This is the grammatical change that happens, right? The major grammatical change that happens in a passive sentence is the change of the verb morphology. The verb changes to, from whatever tense it changes to the participle form of the verb, right? That is the major change. Now, if you've paid attention to the sentence that I just said, the boy killed a snake, the passive construction was the snake was killed, right? What follows that? By the boy. Now, this particular part, by the boy, is not an important element in the sentence, which means in passive construction, you can stop at the snake was killed. You really don't have to go ahead and say by the boy, right? That is an optional part in a passive sentence. Nothing's wrong if you add it. You won't be grammatically or otherwise marked wrong because you added by the boy in the sentence. However, what you should keep in mind is that the sentence, the snake was killed, in itself is grammatically correct. Okay, nobody, that is the actual grammatical sentence that should come in any passive construction. The by phrase, right, which is in this case by the boy, this is an optional element in passive constructions. Right? So these are the three main things that anybody should keep in mind when it comes to conversion to passive sentences. Grammatically, the most important part is the verb, right? The change of the verb from its active form to the participle form in passive sentences. This is where your grammatical or the grammar concept of the passive construction lies. Okay, very simple. Only these three things, nothing more than that. And of course, you know the practical purpose of why passivization should or is used in day-to-day life. Okay, so yeah, my screen is not visible because I have shared anything. I will share it now. I was just at that point of time, I did not have host rights, so I anyway started talking about it. I'll share it now. Okay, is it now visible to you?
Yes, ma'am, visible.
Okay, so if you have understood what I've said, we can go ahead and start, solving some of these questions.
Yes,
now, some of the thing in grammar is that the concept sounds very easy and all right, but you can go wrong with your answers if you're not paying proper attention to. I repeat this, I don't know how many times I've repeated, but that's all right. Nothing wrong about it. When you are solving questions for grammar, right? When you're looking at sentences from a grammatical perspective, please make it a point that you break down your sentences into different constituents, because that makes your job easier, right? You know what are those elements which can change, which cannot change, which should change, which shouldn't change, which has to change, which does not have to change, right? If it doesn't have to change, then you don't have to unnecessarily apply your brain there. So breaking your sentence down into smaller units, constituents, helps you understand the grammar aspect much better. So make this a habit with anything in this course and even for other courses that you undertake, right? So just having said that, we can start looking at, but I hope you've understood what we meant by passivization. Okay, if you have any doubts, you can of course stop and ask anytime you want. So let's look at the first one. The first sentence you have here is, she gives him a box. What passive construction can you have?
That box is given by her. Sorry,
a box,
a box is given by her.
A box is given by her to him or something.
Him.
A box is given by her.
A box is given by her.
To him.
To him, okay. Then somebody else was saying something else. So what kind of sentence, yes?
A box is given to him by her.
A box is given to him by her, and the previous sentence was, a box is given by her to him, right? That is what she said, no?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, all right. Now, see, keep this in mind. look at the sentence, which is why I've told you, look at the sentence carefully. Now, this is a sentence which has a ditransitive verb, right? Which means you're going to have two objects in the sentence. You'll have one direct
Yes,
object and you'll have one indirect object.
He
Right?
means
The direct object here
yeah.
is,
That object, she gives a box, and to whom is him.
okay, all right. So basically, you have two objects in the sentence. You have a direct object and an indirect object. While that is an important information, in terms of passive construction, then either your direct object or your indirect object can then take up the subject position, right? So a sentence that has two objects or a sentence that has a ditransitive verb will have two kind of passive construction. One where your direct object is your subject, or when the direct object occupies a subject position, and another when the indirect object occupies your subject position, right? So there are two possibilities in sentences because you have two objects now, right? So this is something that is very unique to sentences with ditransitive verbs. This is not the case with, of course, other ones, because the number of objects indicate how and the way it can go about, right? So in this sense, in this sentence, one of your answers would be direct object is what in this one, in the sentence? What is your direct object in the sentence?
I think a box.
A box, right? A direct object should answer the question what?
Yes.
Right? And that
Yes.
is a box. In the sentence, it is a box. Indirect object is that which answers question like for whom and to whom.
Him. For whom? This is him.
Right. So you can take either of this as the subject and have two different constructions. So the first one that you've given is a box was, a box is given because this is a present tense. So the participle form would be is plus the participle form of give. Participle form of give is given. And the tense here is present tense, which is taken up by is. Okay, so is given. A box is given by her to him by her. That doesn't matter. Okay, that order really doesn't matter. That you can place as you want. Okay, but what matters to you is what occupies the subject position. So here, one of the construction is that, and what would be the second construction? What would be the second construction? So a box is given by her to him or to him by her. What would be the second construction with, if you take the indirect object as the subject? He is given a box by her. Okay. He is given a box by her.
Okay.
That will be your second construction, second passive construction that you can have in a sentence like this is this. So two, a box is given by her to him or to him by her. And the second one is he is given a box by her. Okay. So in all sentences with the ditransitive verb, there is two possibility of passive construction. One, when a direct object becomes your subject or it takes your subject position. And one, when your indirect object takes the subject position. Okay. So just keep this in mind. So either way, either of the sentences are okay as passive sentence. Okay. All right. Now, is that understood, all of you?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Now, the second one you have, Max will look after him.
No, ma'am, not able to.
No, why can you not? What is the verb in
because
the sentence?
The look after.
Look after is a phrasal verb. Okay. So
yeah.
The only, even if there is a change, there will be only change to the.
If take care, then it's the taken
verb.
care
After
by
is a
him.
preposition
But
here.
look after,
You cannot
how
change
you use
anything.
that. If this
And
is
here,
taken, take.
will is the verb.
Will is the verb. Will is not the verb. It is giving you the tense of the verb, right?
Yes, tense of the verb. Will.
So it tells you that it is future tense. Now you have to convert the verb into the participle form. So he
will be looked after.
Be looked after. Yes, correct. Will be looked after by Max, or even if you avoid by Max, that is all right. Okay, because that's an optional part in passive construction. So the actual sentence would be he will be looked after. Okay. So that is the passive construction for the sentence Max will look after. You have retained tense on will be, and looked after is your participle form. So participle form of look after is looked after. Will be is your tense, right?
Yes, ma'am. Got it.
So, okay. Now the third one, the waiter brought Fred a big steak. The waiter brought.
Then a big steak. A big steak is brought by the waiter to Fred. Brought.
Anybody who wants to answer this question? Anyone thinks there's a problem with the answer?
Yes, helping verb was because past tense.
Yeah, because brought is what? It is past tense, right? So don't change the tense. If you add is to it, then you're changing the tense of the sentence. So participle form for brought would be brought. Okay, so bring, brought, brought. Participle is basically the V3 form. You might have heard this terminology back when you studied it. The V2, V3, V1, V2, V3 form. So V3 form is basically participle form. And for bring, it is bring, brought, brought. So participle form.
Same, na? Brought, same thing. Same happens. Brought will be the same.
What same thing?
I mean, participle of brought is brought, right?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, that it's the brought is the participle form for bring. Not brought's participle form is not brought. Bring's participle form is brought.
Okay, then what will be the right answer? Can you please tell me?
Sorry?
Then what will be the right sentence in passive?
Yeah, I'm coming to that. Okay, we need to take things one by one. Don't have to rush with what the answer is. So you have brought as your participle form, and the tense is what? It's past tense. So you're going to use was. Okay, the waiter brought Fred a big steak will be then a big steak was brought
by the waiter to Fred.
For Fred. Or
Fred is given big.
By is given. Do you see the verb give anywhere?
Sorry. Was brought. Sorry. I got it. Fred was brought a big steak by the waiter.
Yes. Correct. Okay. So this is again a case where you have a ditransitive verb, right? You have bring, which is used as a ditransitive verb here because there are two objects, right? So because of that, you are going to have two passive constructions for this particular sentence. All right, everybody, all of you here, you've understood, right? If you have doubts, you can ask. Otherwise, I take it for having understood. Now, the fourth one, somebody built the house last year. Somebody built the house last year.
The house was built last year by somebody.
The house was built last year. That's it. Not by somebody. That's not required. You simply say the house was built last year. Okay, that's all.
Okay.
Okay, no
And
need
other than somebody, is there anything?
No. So if you have particularly words like this, indefinite pronouns like somebody, someone, all of those, they needn't be used in your passive constructions. This is very similar to the one that I told about other sentences. You don't have to say by Max. Yeah, you don't have to omit that part. It is optional.
But if it's written, then that is not wrong, right?
Sorry?
If in answer is written that by somebody, then it will be wrong or it will be right.
I don't know if my connection is bad or your connection is bad.
Maybe my connection is not good.
Okay. Are others able to hear me properly, or is there a problem?
Yes, ma'am. You are here. You are actually voice is clear.
Voice is clear?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Sometimes I think my network is some problem. So
okay. All right. Fine. I don't know. I didn't get your question. What it was about. Be nice if you can repeat.
I'm saying
Right. So
if
the point
in
I
the,
was making was,
I'm just saying if I by mistake write that by somebody, then it will be right or wrong.
no, this is not about right and wrong. That's what I'm saying. I use the word optional, right? So when
Optional. Okay,
someone
okay.
says optional, it is not about right and wrong.
Yes,
It's like
got
you either use it or you don't use it, doesn't make a difference. That's what
Okay.
optional means.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So somebody built the house last year can be written. So when you have words like somebody, someone, these are all called indefinite pronouns. They come under that category. You really, anyway, you don't know it is somebody. Why to unnecessarily include it in the sentence, right? So there is also something called principle of economy in language. You don't use things that are irrelevant. You don't have to use them if they don't add in any sense to your meaning. It's more applicable to the writing aspect of language actually than speaking. But overall, you can follow that principle. It is good because you can keep your message, whether in speaking or writing, concise. Okay. Okay, so that's the fourth one. Then fifth one, it seems that someone cleaned the office on Tuesday. It seems
the office was cleaned by someone. That's what I said. The office was cleaned on Tuesday.
So you don't get to omit the first part of the sentence. You have to say, it seems that the office was cleaned on Tuesday. Someone is something that you can leave aside, but it seems that is part of the grammatical
Oh, we have to say that.
construction of language that you don't get to omit. It's a that clause. That someone cleaned the office on Tuesday is one full clause, right? So that cannot be taken out. What you can keep aside because of the passive construction is the agent. So that is all right, but you don't do anything to the other parts of the sentence. So you retain it. It seems that the office was.
It seems that office was cleaned by someone on Tuesday.
It seems that the office was cleaned on Tuesday. Enough.
Okay.
Okay. Nothing more than that. Rest of you, you're all fine, right? Okay. Sixth one, Amy thinks that someone is reading to her son.
Madam, what is
Amy.
reading to her son means?
Sorry?
What is reading to her son means?
What is reading to her son?
Yes, madam.
You mean?
I couldn't understand what is reading to her son. The phrase I cannot
The
understand.
phrase reading to means reading. So you read a book to somebody or
Okay,
you
madam.
read a story to someone, right?
Okay, madam.
Huh.
Our son is being read by someone.
Amy thinks that her son has been read by someone.
What is the meaning of that sentence?
Yeah, that's messed up.
Yeah. Okay, so see the focus, the point here is you should know what you have to do, right? You just have to convert this into a passive sentence. So no matter how long the sentence becomes, no matter what all they try and add to the sentence, your focus should be, the first focus is always on the verb. You need to change the verb is reading to its passive morphology, right? And how do you do that? You use the be plus participle form. So tense is present tense, and the aspect that you see here is progressive, which is continuous form, right? So if I retain the participle form of read is what? What's the participle form?
Read.
Read, read, right? So
Read,
that definitely will come in because this is a passive construction. Participle is compulsory, V3. So read is definitely going to be there. Now what happens to the tense? How do I arrange the tense and the aspect into something with be?
Being, by using being.
Is being, right? Amy thinks that her son is being read to. Is being read to. Someone by someone is optional, like I told you. If you want, you can keep it, otherwise leave it aside. So the only change that happens to is to the verb morphology. The passive morphology is applied to the verb read here. So your tense is present tense, your aspect is, or the we use the continuous form of the present tense here, and the participle form of your verb read is read. So just knowing these three things will help you convert into passive. Whatever else comes here and there is not a matter of concern for us, right? So is being read, that is your major catch in the sentence, right? So put together, it would be Amy thinks that her son, because you have to, change the object position. So Amy thinks that her son, which is originally the object of the sentence, is now being pushed to the subject position, right? So Amy thinks that subject position of that clause that someone is reading to her son. So Amy thinks that her son is being read to. Okay. See this? All right. Yes, no confusions?
Yes, then the sentence will be Amy thinks that her son is being read to, right?
Yeah.
Got it.
Okay. Fine. Now, seventh one, I don't like people seeing me in my pajamas. I don't like people seeing me in my pajamas. What is the verb here? The main verb of the
Seeing.
seeing, right? Verb is not
Then
seeing,
I
verb is
don't
see.
like.
Okay, so learn to answer it like this. If somebody asks you what's the verb, you don't say seeing. Your verb is see, right? Which has a
Yes.
Continuous form.
present continuous
continuous
form to it, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Now, so how do you convert? We just looked at it in the previous sentence. How do you convert the present continuous to the passive morphology?
I don't like
What is the participle form for see?
seen.
Seen.
S-E-E-N, seen, right? So
Yes,
see,
yes.
seen.
Yes, double E N.
Means see, V2 is what? Past tense, see.
Hmm.
Saw.
Saw, see, saw, and
See.
seen. Okay,
See,
this
saw,
is see is
seen.
an irregular verb, which means it has, which it is, it's an example of an irregular verb, which means it has three different forms for all the three, V1, V2, V3, right? So see, saw, seen. Seen is your participle form, and tense we discussed is the present continuous form, right? So what do you add? You have to use the be. And
Is
what happens to
being-
that?
Is been seen. Is been seen in my
Why will
pajamas.
you use is here? You don't have the auxiliary is anywhere in the original sentence. Your auxiliary in the original sentence is what? Do.
I don't like, right?
You don't have is anywhere. So you retain it. Okay, you don't like, sorry, I don't like people seeing me in my pajamas. So your participle is seen, and now you know that it is a present continuous form, and you have to change your be form of the verb accordingly, no? Because that is the one which will show your tense. So what happens to be when you have to show present continuous?
I don't like my pajama is being seen by people.
I don't like, no,
My
you're not
pajama.
answering my question. I'm telling you,
I don't like to be seen in pajamas.
in the passive morphology of the verb, you use be plus participle form. You have the participle form for see, we decided it is seen. Now you have be. What is the function of be in that formula? It has to show you the tense. And the tense here is present continuous. What is the present continuous form of be?
Being seen.
Being. It's simple, no? I don't like being
seen in my pajamas.
in my pajamas. I don't like being seen in my pajamas. That's all. Very simple. Okay. Which is why I tell you the major catch for you in any passive construction is the passive morphology of the verb. Once you're done with that, rest of the things really doesn't matter. And of course, the subject and the object position. Okay. Now, these sentences were chosen purposefully because they are a little different from your usual sentences that appear in, examples. Yes, somebody? Some question I heard.
Can you please repeat the seventh one? I don't understand it. Why we are not switching object and subject position here?
I don't like being seen in my pajamas.
Yes.
Because this is okay. So then try to switch it and see what sentence you get.
Yes, the sentence has no meaning. Is
Sentence has
different meaning and don't relate here.
sentence has different meaning. No, I'm saying if you want to switch, what will you say? So what is the subject of the sentence?
My pajamas. No. Ma'am, I don't understand it.
So what is the subject of the original sentence? I don't like people seeing me in my pajamas.
I
People,
Fine. Okay, fine. Now what
people
else?
seeing me in pajamas. I don't like people.
You cannot reconstruct the sentence like that, right? You try and push the whatever objects or subjects you see here, try to push it around and see if you can have a sensible sentence. You won't get one.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, this is similar to what we did with Amy things. So why did you, we didn't do anything with Amy. We only worked with the clause that had all the elements. So you only work with the clause which has the verb which needs to be passivized. Rest of the part you don't take. So within that, this is the construction this is the construction which fits your passive construction. You change anything there and your sentence changes its meaning entirely.
Yes, ma'am. Okay, understand.
Right? Or rather, you don't even have a meaningful sentence. Forget about having different meaning. You don't get a meaning out of that, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
Ma'am, what is the answer, madam?
What is
the answer for 7th? I don't like
answer for 7th is I don't
being
like
seen.
being seen
And in pajamas.
in my pajamas. So see all this in my pajamas and all, if you look at the original construction, they will be considered as what we call as adjuncts. I'm not using those things because you're not introduced to those concepts. Okay. You have all of them in English too. So since they are not introduced, I'm not, bringing in those concepts and discussing. But this is how you do the passive construction for this, right? Right? Yeah. Any other question? I'm sorry. I think who asked this question? I think you had some additional question.
No, ma'am. I understand.
No, not you, Deepa. The person who spoke last. I did not see.
Yes, madam. Clear, madam.
Vijay.
Cleared, madam.
Yeah. Okay.
I got it.
Fine. Okay. And so 8th one now. My little. These are all very. If you look at all of them, they're all similar kind of sentences, especially the verb forms that you see there. My little niece loves people chasing her. My little niece loves people chasing her.
Chasing her. Then my little niece loves chased. Sorry, is being chased by people.
Is, why will you bring is? You don't have is in the original sentence.
Is being chased.
Don't add auxiliary verbs by your choice. Okay.
Yes. Sorry, by mistake.
My
Being
little,
chased by people. By being chased.
my little niece loves. Sorry, come again.
Love being chased.
Okay. My little niece loves being chased. Okay. You don't have to
Use people.
Use
So
people
that's
or anything there. My little niece loves being
chased.
Okay,
Is it
the
right?
only change you have brought to is the verb. You've converted that as to the passive construction. Okay.
Yes, I'm getting it clear
one.
now.
I think that someone
More
built the.
clear.
This is very similar to. Sorry.
I'm saying just I'm getting it more clear now.
Okay. Oh, I thought there was a question. Okay. All right. Good. Now, 9th one is very similar to this one, right? The 4th one. Somebody built the house last year. So I think that someone built the house in 1814.
I think the house
I
passed.
think
Was-
that, don't omit the clause. I think
Yeah,
that.
I think that the house was built
Hmm.
in 1840.
Yes, correct. I think that the house was built in 1814. Okay, so keep this also in mind. Don't change any constituents' basic nature. Okay, so if it has a that clause, you retain the that clause. You don't do anything to the basic structure of the sentence. In passive construction, the only thing that you change are three things: the subject object positions, then the optional by phrase, okay, that you either keep or you not use them, and the verb, the passive verb morphology, right? Nothing else should see a change in the sentence. You're not allowed to do any other change to the sentence. Only these three for passive constructions. Right, now the last one here: she hates people laughing at her.
She hates being laughed at her.
She hates being
Laughed at her.
laughed at. Okay, she hates being laughed at. You don't say laughed at her, that is not required. You say she hates being laughed at. Okay,
Okay.
so the only change that you have brought to is the present continuous form of the verb here, laughing, right? Being laughed at, right? So these kind of constructions are a little, they're common in your speech, but maybe they are not that common in the questions in passive sentences that you have seen in exams till now. I have got a list of them purposefully because there is nowhere else you're going to be looking at it closely. So the exam that you would take may or may not have these kind of questions. They might mostly keep the question simple, but it is better that you learn these ones as well. Okay. So the sentences that we have looked at today, and there's a reason why I took them, because we are going to discuss subordinate clause. If you look at all these passive sentences, barring a few, maybe the first two or three, all of them are questions, all of them are sentences that have subordinate clauses within them, right? So when you have a subordinate clause, if you have observed, you would see that in all the sentences that we saw, the passive construction or the changes happen to the subordinate clause. We did not do it to the major clause, okay, but to the subordinate clause. This is something that I wanted to see, right? But why is it important? Because as you have a subordinate clause in a sentence, the sentence becomes a little lengthy and a little complicated, right? So it is important. It is very important that you look at how these kind of constructions work in a little complex, complicated sentences too, not just the simple one. Because when you write, right, for in real life purposes, what we mostly write are complex sentences. We don't use that many simple sentences while we write. Most of the sentences that we end up writing and saying are also complex sentences. So application of your basic grammatical concepts to complex sentences are also important to know. Hence these questions. Okay. I hope that would be a little helpful. Now, we'll move on to the clauses part. Okay, so now before we begin the questions, let me have a clarification from your side on how well you understand subordinate clause, independent clause, main clause.
No, ma'am. I watched videos, but still, once maybe in sentence I am able to get it, but in other sentence, then I'm confused, not able to get what actually the
So what do you not understand? There should be some problem with the conceptual clarity, right?
From
okay,
where?
how many of you understand?
From where that clause start, and just like adjective clause, it just like adverb clause, it describes the verb. Or sometimes, so this is confusing for me.
We'll come to that.
Okay.
But we need to take it step by step. You don't jump and look at what types of clauses are. For that, you have to first know what clauses are, right? So how good is your understanding about a clause? Anybody, needn't be just one person. Those of you who understand, you can respond. What is a clause? If you're speaking, you're not audible. Please be a little louder, whoever it is. It is, no, I don't know who it is. Okay, what's a clause?
Clause have a verb with tense. A
Clause has verb with tense, but before that, clause is something
These
that
are
will have a
structure
subject
of-
and a predicate,
Yes, yes.
Structure of sentence.
right? It will have both the parts. Sorry,
Yes.
subject and verb. If you have a verb, it technically means it has a predicate also, right?
Yes.
So clause is
That's the
anything
difference
that would
between
have a
phrase
verb. So
and
that
clause.
depicts,
Clause has subject, a phrase doesn't have subject.
yeah, it's a difference between both of them. And but clause is also this. Clause is anything that has a subject and a verb. Okay, or rather you can simply say that it is like a sentence, right? So sentence is also, the basic sentence that you see is also a clause in that sense, because any basic sentence in English will have a subject and a verb, right? So that is your understanding of clause. If that is understood, then comes the next two concepts, which is independent clause and dependent clause, or there are many names to this. So different people, they use different terminologies, but they basically all mean the same. So you might have seen dependent and independent clauses, or you would have seen main clause and
Yes,
subordinate
yes.
clause. Or there's also something called
Okay, both are same. Subordinate clause and independent clause are same.
they're the same. Yeah, there's no difference.
Okay, I
between them.
didn't know. I
There are
know.
also people who would use terms like, there are people who would use terms like metrics, metrics clause and embedded clause. They are all the same. Okay.
Okay, that's I'm not able to get it. The subordinate clause, the direct clause and the indirect clause, that I know. But okay, now I get it.
Okay, subordinate clause is anything. So in a sentence, you can have sentences which have just one clause. Okay, so there's one subject and there's verb and the predicate, or says simply subject and predicate. Okay, these kind of sentences are usually referred to as simple sentences, right? So there is one subject, there is predicate, and you're done with it, right? Then there are sentences which would have two such clauses put together. So one independent clause, right, with one subject and a predicate, and there's another another sentence with one subject and the predicate. Both of them are joined together using a conjunction, mostly referred to as a coordinating conjunction, like and or but or so or therefore. These kind of sentences are called compound sentences. So what do compound sentences have? They have two independent clauses. What are independent clauses? It is a sentence with one subject and one predicate. Okay, so these are independent clauses. Okay, and they are put together using or they're linked together using a coordinating conjunction. Why is it called a coordinating conjunction? Because in a compound sentence, both the sentences that are linked together, they have equal status, right? They are equal in the hierarchy. One is not above the other. One is not dependent on the other. That is the main catch here. So such kind of sentences are called compound sentences. For example, he is a boy and she is a girl. So he is a boy is one independent clause. She is a boy is another independent clause. Both of them are joined together using and. And is a coordinating conjunction because it does not change the status. One sentence is not dependent on the other. They're simply put together using this conjunction, right? So these kind of sentences are then called compound sentences. Then there's a third type, which is called the complex sentences, and which is the most commonly used kind of sentences in our day-to-day lives. Okay, in a complex sentence, you have at least. Okay, I'm saying at least because there could be more than that. So at least one dependent clause and one independent clause. Okay, independent clauses can also be referred to as subordinate clauses. The name comes from the fact that this particular clause is dependent on the other one, the independent one, to complete its meaning, right? Which is why it is subordinate to the other. That is where the name subordinate has come from. So it is same as being same as the dependent clause. In a complex sentence, you have at least one independent clause and you will have at least one dependent clause. So when you have a combination of these two, at least one dependent and one independent clause, or one independent and one subordinate clause, you have a complex sentence. Okay. Now our task is to figure out the kinds of these dependent clauses. Okay. When they come together with an independent clause to form a sentence to, to produce a complex sentence, the part which is subordinate in the sentence, it has certain roles to perform in that sentence. And that role can be either adjectival in nature or adverbial and what's the other one? Noun in nature, right? So the subordinate clause can either function like a noun or like an adjective or like an adverb. Okay, that is all. The basic idea is that you have a complex sentence with one dependent and one independent clause, and that dependent clause or the subordinate clause, as it is called alternatively, either it functions as a noun or as an adjective or as an adverbial, making it an adverbial, noun, or adjectival clause. That's all. Right? So it's the function that they perform in that sentence, what makes it which gives you the different kinds of subordinate clauses. So we look at that. To begin with, or to understand how to, identify the kinds of noun or adjectival or adverbial clause, I think what you see on the screen would be a helpful tool. So you ask questions like whom or what. If your subordinate clause in the sentence, if it answers questions like whom or what, then the clause is what? It is functioning as a noun, right? But if it asks, if it answers questions which or which one, okay, particularly which or which one, then it is performing the function of an adjective, right? And if it is performing the function of an adverb in the sentence, then it is going to answer a bunch of questions like when, where, why, with what goal or result, or under what conditions, right? All of these questions, if any of this question is answered by the subordinate clause, then the nature of your subordinate clause is that of an adverbial clause. Okay, this is the basic understanding. Now, somebody was asking about, how do I understand from where does the subordinate clause start? Okay, you will, it is not about from where does the subordinate clause start. Okay, so you look at the sentence and identify which one of the clause given in the sentence is an independent clause. Right? So let's work on an example and try and understand that. Let's look at the, the first one. Some people buy expensive cars simply because they can. Okay, which part of the sentence do you think is an independent clause? Okay, independent clause, remember, it should have a subject and it should have a predicate. It should be a full sentence on its own. It should make complete sense.
Some people buy expensive cars.
Okay, some people buy
Expensive
cars. Okay,
Yes.
This is your sentence, independent clause in the sentence, right? So whatever follows it is then your subordinate clause. Because if you see simply because they can, this is not a complete sentence, right? It does not give you full sense of what is to be conveyed. Then this remaining part in the sentence becomes your subordinate clause. That is how you do the distinction. So it's not like where does it begin and where does it end. The distinction to understand what is a subordinate clause or to identify subordinate clause in the sentence, the first thing that you should be doing is to identify which part of the sentence is an independent clause. Okay. Once you get that, whatever remains is your subordinate clause. That's all. Okay, that is how you do it. In certain sentences, it may not be as neat as you see in the first one. In certain sentence, what happens within the main clause, within one full sentence, you will have the subordinate clause embedded in one part, either in the subject part or in the object part. We have examples of that also here, so I'll talk to you about that then. In such cases, clearly dividing them on the, as you see the sentence, one may not be an easy task, but you will have to look at the constituents again. Like then you will have to see in the larger sentence, what is the subject, what is the verb, what is the object, which part of it is, having a clause, which part of it is having just the phrase, right? So those kind of sentences also exist. So it is your task to figure out which part is that which is not making full sense. Which one does not appear to you as a full clause, right? Okay, so now the first sentence, some people buy expensive cars simply because they can. So simply because they can is what you have identified as your subordinate clause. What is it doing? What question is it answering?
It's giving the reason why
It's
people,
giving reason why. So some people buy expensive cars simply because they can, right? It is giving you a reason for why people are buying expensive cars. Answers the question why. And if it answers the question
adverbial clause.
why, what kind of clause is it?
Adverb,
Adverbial clause. Okay, adverbial clause. Get this? Okay, now look at the second one. Many people hope that Canada can resolve its economic problems. Which part of this sentence is independent?
Canada can resolve its economic problem.
Canada can resolve its economic problems. Looks like the full part to you. But look at the word that goes before Canada. What is that?
Many people hope that.
No, the word that goes before Canada. That, right? The word that.
Yes, that.
So this part, this whole part is what forms the clause here. Okay, this is an important thing. You need to understand how it works for some questions. Okay, this is your whole sentence, and in this sentence, many people is your subject, hope is your verb, and this whole part that you see here, that Canada can resolve its economic problems, is the object to the verb hope. With me? Understood what I'm saying? Right?
Yes.
This is a basic sentence. Okay. So you have a subject, you have a verb, and you have an object. The object position of this sentence is what has taken up the clause. So although Canada can resolve its economic problems looks like a full sentence to you in first go, you should understand that it is not Canada can resolve its economic problems. This part is that Canada can resolve its economic problems.
Okay.
This is not a independent clause. What is this?
Yeah,
This
with
is a
that, this
dependent
is not the
clause,
independent
right?
clause. Yes.
Yeah, with that, it is a dependent clause. It is no more a dependent clause. Now, if that part is understood, you will have to tell me what that clause that you see here, no? What question does it answer? Many people hope that Canada can resolve its economic problems. Which question does it answer?
Hope. It describes hope.
What, which, whom, where, when, which question?
What they think, what they hope.
What, right? Many people hope what? Many people hope that Canada can resolve its economic problems. Right. So if it answers the question what, then what kind of clause?
Then the noun clause.
Noun clause. It's a noun clause, right? So this is very simple. All you have to do is you will have to look at the sentence carefully, break it open, and then understand, right? If you look at it, you know, the sentence as a whole, you can commit a lot of errors, but break it open and things are going to be clearer. Fine. All right. Now, third one, the bankers need to know what they should do.
what they should do is independent.
Look at it carefully.
The bankers need to.
What they should do is not independent. Because there is no question that you see here, right? It's a sentence.
Bankers need to know that is.
Bankers need to know is what?
Is it independent or not?
No. Bankers need to know is not a full sentence.
The bankers,
Right.
the subject.
The bankers is subject and need is a verb. That is clear.
Yes.
Need to know what? This is the need to know what? What they should do.
So it is answering what?
What, right? So this is an infinitive, right? This is not your verb. This is an infinitive verb here, to know. Your major verb in this,
Need.
This one is your main verb. But this is a verb complex together, okay? So although to know is not the main verb, need to know becomes your verb be complex, right? They go along.
Then this
So-
is noun phrasal. Need to know what they should do.
Correct. So the bankers need to know what? Bankers need to know what they should do. So if it answers the question what, then it is a noun clause. Okay. All right. Okay. Now, fourth one, which one is the person who stole your car? What is the subordinate clause here? Which one is the person who stole your car?
Ma'am, the independent is the person who stole your car.
Stole your car.
Which one? No, which one is the person who stole your car? Which, okay, what is the independent clause here?
The person who stole your car.
The person who stole your car is not complete. Where is the verb? That does not have a verb.
Which one? Which
No,
one?
that is the question I am asking you. Which one is the independent
Which one is person?
clause here?
Which one?
Which one is the person who stole your car?
It is a question
Independent
mark,
clause
so
here is going to be which one is the person?
Okay.
No,
Which one is the
that is
person?
okay. Let it be a question or anything. It is still a statement, no? A question sentence is also a sentence. So independent clause in the sentence is which one is the person, right? That is the independent one, right? It can stand on its own. What is an independent clause? Something that can stand on its own. So if I ask a question, which one is the person? Is that a complete question? Which one is
Yes.
the person? Is that a complete question? Yes, it is, right? So who stole your car is an additional thing that I am adding to that sentence. I can very well stop at which one is the person, but I decided to give a little more detail. So I went ahead and
Okay. Then this is also a noun clause because of
use
who
the clause who stole your, right? So what am I doing here? Which one is the person who stole your car? So who stole your car is this part becomes your subordinate clause in the sentence, right? And what is this clause talking about? What is it about?
a person.
The person who stole your car, right? Person
Yes.
is what? It is noun, right?
It's a
And
noun
anything
clause.
no,
Adjective.
person is a noun and
Person
this part is
who-
modifying that noun, right?
No,
Okay, the person-
adjective.
So anything that modifies a noun is what?
Adjective.
Adjective. So this is an adjective.
Okay, got it.
See, just because you saw who and what and all, don't get confused and, go and jump and write noun clause and all those things. Analyze the function first. The person who stole your car. So who stole your car is your subordinate clause, which is giving you additional information and details about your noun, the person. Any clause or phrase that does that job for a noun, modifying the noun, is an adjective, which means its function here is to act as an adjectival clause. Okay, be a little careful about this. Okay, so the word who here is, it is used as a relative pronoun here, right? Which links the which is very common in all those adjectival clauses. Okay. Now, fifth one, wherever there is a large American city, there will be poverty. Wherever there is a large American city, there will be poverty. Which one is the independent sentence here? Sorry, clause. Independent clause.
There is a large.
American city.
There is a large American city.
Adverbial clause, ma'am.
No. You haven't answered the question about the independent and the independent part. Okay.
There is a large American city. Independent clause.
No, I don't know why you're looking at it that way. The
But
independent clause in the
wherever
sentence
is
what?
there, then
will
it
be
is
poverty.
not independent. Wherever.
Right. So if it has the word attached to it, if you have wherever with it, then how can there is a large American city be your independent clause? Okay, you can't pick anything from somewhere you want, right? So it is very similar to the second one, that Canada can resolve its economic, it's one, that is one chunk together. That is not out of that clause. It is a part of the clause. So similarly, wherever is also part of this clause, there is a large American city. So they together form a clause, right? There will be poverty is what is your independent clause here. There will be poverty.
Yes,
Wherever there is a large American city is your subordinate clause.
subordinate.
So don't do this, okay? Don't get confused. Don't keep your, don't try to cut away things from here and there and then somehow try and make an independent sentence or clause there, right? That's not how it works. Don't take the constituent elements out of it. Like you cannot keep the that out of it in the second sentence because it is a part of that clause, right? It is, that is the word that introduces this particular clause and hence that is a part of it. Similarly in 5, wherever introduces it. So it is also part of that clause. So you don't keep that one out of it. That's not how it functions. Okay. So wherever there is a large American city is your subordinate clause. Now, what is it telling?
Where? That means it's
About
the adverbial clause.
Wherever there is a large American city answers. Which question does it answer?
Where?
Which question? Where?
Where?
Right. So this is an adverbial clause. Correct. Okay. 6th one. The books which the professor assigned were very expensive.
This is also like sense, ma'am.
This
This
is your-
book.
This is your
Sign is a
verb.
verb. Yes.
Were very expensive. No, sorry, not this one. I'm sorry. This is your verb.
Where? Okay.
Okay. So the books is your subject here, right? Then were is your verb here. Very is your adverb. Okay, that is
Okay, then this is adjective
part of the
clause.
predicate. Were very expensive. So what is your subordinate clause? Okay, which the
Okay.
professor assigned. That becomes your subordinate clause here. Okay, the books which the professor assigned. So what is this doing? Which the professor assigned? What is it about? What question does it answer? Which books, right? Which books? The books
Which
which
books?
the
Were
professor
very
assigned.
expensive.
Hmm.
This describes a noun. That means this is
Which books?
adjective.
The books which the professor assigned. So adjectival, right? Adjectival clause. Okay, understood others? Any confusions, any doubts? All right. 7th one, Canada might give up its marketing boards if the European community gives up its green subsidies. Considerably long sentence. You can see if there is somewhere you can break and have a independent clause. But this is a straightforward sentence actually. Canada might give up its marketing boards if the European community gives up its green subsidies. So this is a conditional statement. It has condition.
First one is the Canada
Then
might give up its marketing board.
Right.
The second one is depends on the first.
Correct. So then this is what, and it's a condition. So it describes the conditions under which it would happen. Then it is what? If it talks about conditions, then what kind of clause? Adverbial clause.
Can you please explain that?
Okay. Anything, any clause that talks about conditions, under what conditions or about what goals will tell you. This is adverbial clause. Okay.
Okay, under condition, then that's why it is adverbial.
Yes. Right.
Okay.
Now, 8th one, that is the place where Wolfe's and Montcalm's armies fought. That is the place where Wolfe's and Montcalm's armies fought. So what is the independent clause in the sentence?
Wolfe and Montcalm's armies fought.
That is the place.
That is the place. Yes.
That is the place, right? That is the place is your independent clause. And your dependent clause is where Wolfe's and Montcalm's armies fought. So what kind of clause?
Adverbial clause. This is where.
This is
So it can
precisely
be
what I
where.
was looking for. Okay.
Adjective clause.
It is an adjective clause. Okay. Don't
Yeah, I'm getting that.
commit this error. You have walked into that trap. Okay.
Yes.
Where Wolves and Montcalm's armies fought is describing the place.
Yes.
That is the place where Wolf's and Montcalm's armies fought. So don't walk
Yes,
into this
got
thing.
it.
Just because you see where or what and all that, it does not automatically become your adverbial or noun clause. Okay, look at the function.
One question here. I see that there is a pattern that subordinate clause always answers the independent clause question. So that is.
It always answers what?
Like subordinate clause always answers the question, like that is the place. I mean, independent. What is independent? It is answering the question which has been asked in independent clause. So that is common in every sentence.
It has to be, no, because they are part of the same sentence. They have to be linked to each other in some way. And we are looking at what kind of linkage they have with each other, right? Sometimes it is that of the adjectival rule. Sometimes it is like a noun, sometimes like an adverbial thing, which talks about a place or time or something. So yes, that is not uncommon to see something like that because they're part of the same sentence still.
No,
Okay.
no, I'm asking it is common to every sentence. No?
As in what? What
like
is common to
every subordinate clause answer the questions of independent clause.
Every subordinate
like in every sentence
clause answers the some question about. Yeah, it will be. What else will it do? It doesn't have anything else to do. It is, that's what I was saying, that when I say that, you know, it answers the question which, what, etc. It is showing that these two are connected in one way. Grammatically, although one is dependent on the other. That's all. So yes, it is the case with all the sentences, which has subordinate and independent clause.
Okay.
Right. Okay. Now the ninth one, unless the crown can make a better case, the accused murderer will not be convicted. Again, unless introduces condition to sentence, right? Unless the crown can make a better case. That means one follows the other. If one doesn't happen, the other doesn't happen. This is called a condition. So this is conditional statement. Again, if it is a conditional statement, then the subordinate clause is going to be of what nature? This is your subordinate clause in the ninth one, right? Because that
is, yes, the first part.
That has the word unless, and it introduces condition to the sentence. And this subordinate clause, unless the crown can make a better case, is what kind of clause?
Adverbial.
Adverbial
clause.
Adverbial clause. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So the last one, it is important to ask whether the wedding is formal or semi-formal. It is important to ask whether the wedding is formal or semi-formal.
Independent
is important to ask.
It is important to ask is independent. Like.
Sorry?
It is important to ask.
It is important to ask is what?
Independent.
Independent, right?
Yes.
And this part?
Subordinate. Because it depends on the first part.
Okay. Now, there is a method of looking at it. So what question will you ask to this one?
What to ask? What is important to ask?
Important to ask what? Right? That is the question you're going to ask.
Yes. What is
it is important to ask what? Right. So if it asks the question what, then?
Noun
clause. Noun clause. What is important to us? So it is important to ask what? It is important to ask whether the wedding is formal or semi-formal, right? So it answers the question what, and hence your subordinate clauses of is what? It is noun clause. Get this?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. So that's all. These are the, different kinds of subordinate clauses that you should know. This is enough. If you're able to do this much analysis to your sentences, then you will never go wrong in your subordinate clause, either identification of the clause itself or the type of clause. This clear?
Okay.
Do you need any clarifications further, or do you have any questions I can answer?
Ma'am, where we can find a sentence like that more to practice?
Sentences like this.
Yes. Any website or?
You can actually anywhere on the internet possible, but exercise books we'll have to look through a little bit more. Let me see. If I find more, then I will attach it
So
to your
if you have
supplement. Oh, by the way, I have
more
to send
than
these.
more sentence like this, please upload in the portal so that we can practice.
Sure. We'll do that. Okay.
Thank you, ma'am.
Okay. So are these things clear? Are we good for today? No problem.
Yes, it seems clear, but we have to practice so that it will
Yes.
be more clear to understand what is the independent and
You're a
independent.
little, still a little underconfident because,
Yeah, not much
Okay.
confident.
but the concept is clear, right?
Yes,
Yes.
almost.
But you understand the concept now, right?
Yes, understood.
Okay, fine then. All right. I'll try and attach a few more questions to this, and we'll upload so you can practice on this one. Simultaneously, at the same time, you can also look at those additional questions that are uploaded. Please go through them as well. I'm sure they'll have plenty of examples there as well. So
Okay.
all of them put together should help you give some practice in this. Okay.
Okay.
All right. So thank you. We'll close for today then. We won't be meeting for this session again, but we'll definitely see you during the live sessions. Okay.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am. Have a great day.
Okay. Thank you, all of you. Wish you all a great day too.